Hey everyone, MB here at the OFAH Heritage Center. I'm standing in front of our Ontario exhibit because today's lesson is all about the white-tailed deer. White-tailed deer are Ontario's smallest member of the family Cervidae, the same family in which you'll find moose, elk, and caribou. In today's lesson, we'll aim to answer 5 questions about the white-tailed deer: how to properly identify a whitetail, where do they live, what do they eat, can you harvest a white-tailed deer, and what challenges do white-tailed deer populations face here in Ontario? So to start, how do you properly identify a white-tailed deer? White-tailed deer are big game mammals, and an adult white-tailed deer will stand about 1 meter to 1.5 meters tall at the shoulder. A male white-tailed deer, known as a buck, can weigh anywhere from 45 to 136 kilograms, which, if one pineapple weighs 1 kilogram, that's about 136 pineapples. A female white-tailed deer, known as a doe, weighs much less. A female white-tailed deer, or doe, can weigh anywhere from 39 to 60 kilograms, or about 60 pineapples. White-tailed deer have that recognizable tail with the white underside that gives them their common name. They will use their tail almost as a flag to warn others of danger nearby. In addition to alerting others of danger, different tail actions, from a swish or a flick, are all forms of body language, something that hunters keep a close eye on to predict what the deer will do next. Next, we'll talk about antlers, another key characteristic of the white-tailed deer. And antlers are pretty fascinating. We could probably do a virtual lesson all about antlers. But when it comes to the white-tailed deer, only bucks have antlers, does do not. However, very rarely you will get a doe with a set of antlers, but they'll generally be pretty small. Antlers are made of bone, and while they're growing, they will be covered in a thick velvet that provides a rich blood supply to the growing bone just beneath. Antlers are important for attracting a mate, establishing dominance to then gain breeding rights. Antlers are shed after the rut in the winter time, but they'll quickly regrow in the spring. One tool that white-tailed deer hunters use is called a rattle bag, and this is what it sounds like. This sound is said to mimic 2 bucks fighting, antler to antler. The idea is that sound will pique the interest of other bucks in the area and hopefully bring them closer. The fur on an adult white-tailed deer is light brown to gray in color, helping them to camouflage very well with their surroundings. A young white-tailed deer, known as a fawn, will have similar colored fur to an adult, but perhaps a bit darker. Fawns will be covered in white spots, often arranged in stripes on their back. Fawns are born in sheltered areas, and the white spots are said to mimic the sunlight filtering through the canopy, helping the young animal to camouflage. As the deer gets older, these spots will disappear. It's important to note that if you do stumble across a fawn, the best thing to do is to leave it alone and just give it space. Chances are the mother is nearby. Thinking of other adaptations that help them to survive, deer have an excellent sense of smell, excellent sense of sight, and check out those ears. Deer have an excellent sense of hearing, with the ability to move their ears around in different directions. Deer have unique tracks that look like this. If a deer is running, their toes will be further spread apart to provide stability, and their dew claws may also be present in the tracks they leave behind. Our next question is, where do white-tailed deer live? White-tailed deer can be found all across Ontario, from the boreal forest throughout central and eastern Ontario, right down into southern Ontario. They live in a variety of habitats, ranging from fields and meadows to mixed and deciduous forests. White-tailed deer thrive along edge habitats that provide sustenance, shelter, and space. Which brings us to our next question: what do they eat? White-tailed deer are herbivores, which means they are specially adapted to consume only plants. Deer are ruminants, just like the Arctic herbivores we learned about in a previous virtual lesson. Ruminants have a specialized four-chambered stomach that allows them to extract the nutrients from plants through the process of fermentation. In the spring and summer, white-tailed deer will consume leaves, grasses, berries, and mushrooms. In the fall, they'll consume the buds and twigs of shrubs and trees, and also eat acorns. In the winter, they'll browse on twigs of hardwood trees and the needles of conifer trees like white cedar and hemlock. Harsh winters can significantly affect deer populations, and the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters provides support for deer populations during the winter through the Deer Safe program. The Deer Safe program is based on 3 key activities: trail breaking, browse cutting, and emergency feeding. The OFAH only supports emergency feeding in emergency situations, where the evidence, usually MNRF snow data, shows that there is a chance of a significant population decline due to a severe winter. The OFAH doesn't support supplemental feeding, which is the ongoing feeding of deer throughout the winter, regardless of winter severity, because supplemental feeding can have several negative implications. Our next question is, can you harvest a white-tailed deer in Ontario? The answer is yes. Does anybody know the term we use to refer to deer meat? That's right, it's venison, and it sure is nutritious and delicious. When it comes to hunting, it's critical that you refer to the most up-to-date current version of the Ontario hunting regulations available online. Depending on the Wildlife Management Unit, the season opens as early as September across northwestern Ontario and runs until the middle of December. Whereas most of central and southern Ontario are restricted to just 2 weeks of deer season in November. You must possess an outdoors card, deer license, and purchase a deer tag or party hunt with someone who has a valid deer tag. Don't forget a possession and acquisition license if you are hunting with a gun. Antlerless deer may also be harvested. An antlerless deer does not necessarily mean a doe, but is defined as a deer with no antlers or antlers that are both less than 7.5 centimeters long. To harvest an antlerless deer, you must apply to the antlerless draw, which opens in the spring, with results posted by the end of the summer. At the end of the harvest season, Ontario deer hunters must submit a report to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, even if they are unsuccessful in harvesting a deer. This information is critical for managing deer populations and is just another way that hunters contribute to conservation. And our final question: what challenges do white-tailed deer populations face here in Ontario? One issue that the OFAH is keeping a very close eye on is chronic wasting disease. And because the issue of chronic wasting disease could be its own virtual lesson, I'll be sure to include some links to important resources below. Chronic wasting disease is highly infectious, incurable, and 100% fatal to members of the cervid family. Chronic wasting disease is caused by a misfolded protein known as a prion and belongs to a group of diseases that also includes mad cow disease. Another current issue that involves white-tailed deer is Lyme disease, and May is Lyme Disease Awareness Month. Lyme disease is caused by bacteria. This bacteria is carried by certain ticks and spreads to the host when the tick bites. Lyme disease in humans can have a range of effects, from rashes and flu-like symptoms to more serious symptoms, including arthritic, cardiac, and neurological effects. Lyme disease can often be effectively treated, especially if detected in the early stages. The species of concern here in Ontario is the black-legged tick, sometimes referred to as the deer tick, because white-tailed deer are the principal host for adult ticks. Deer do not carry or spread Lyme disease, but rather play a role in physically spreading ticks. It's the white-footed mouse that's the reservoir for Lyme disease, and ticks are the vector. Because Lyme disease could be a virtual lesson all on its own, I'll be sure to include some links to important resources below. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like this video and comment below. And if you or your class or your community group would like to learn more about the white-tailed deer, reach out by email to book a free live question and answer session. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay connected as we learn together outside the classroom.